Hey guys, welcome back to the BuzWeaver channel. And in our top stories today, what a weekend since Friday's debacle in the Oval Office. We have a lot of material to work through, so bear with me. We're going to try to cover as much as possible because, of course, here on the BuzWeaver channel, we take the difficult, we take the complicated, we take the tumult, and we narrow it down as much as possible and try to deframe the framing that we see from the media and what is happening against Trump detractors. Trump slammed Zelenskyy for saying the end of the Russia war is still very, very far away. This is from the AP, if I didn't mention that. President Donald Trump slammed Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy on Monday for suggesting that the end of Russia's war against Ukraine likely is still very, very far away. The comments come as prominent Trump allies escalate pressure on Zelenskyy to dramatically change his approach to the U.S. president, who has made quickly ending the war a top priority or step aside. Long, complicated relationships between the leaders has reached a nadir following a disastrous White House meeting in which Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance excoriated Zelenskyy for not being sufficiently thankful for U.S. support for Ukraine since Russian President Vladimir Putin ordered the February 2022 invasion. Now, here's what's extraordinary, because here on the BuzWeaver channel, we take the difficult when we just break it all down. So, Donald Trump had been campaigning on ending the war in Ukraine. This was not a mystery. They worked for weeks on the mineral deal. This was not a mystery. They invited Zelenskyy to the White House. Zelenskyy wanted an additional 5 days. He comes to the White House. They have everything set up. Everything is prepared. And then Zelenskyy goes into a tirade, goes into a contest of wills against J.D. Vance. We all can appreciate and understand what's happening in Ukraine. We understand this clearly. But Zelenskyy left with nothing. How was this an ambush by Donald Trump, the deal maker? Donald Trump prides himself on making deals. Even the media admits that. Why in the world would he undermine his own deal-making process? It doesn't make any sense. This is not an ambush. It's absurd. It's a leveraging point for the left to make their arguments. And if Zelenskyy was trying to score points with Democrats and world leaders, what does that amount to his people who are still getting attacked by Russian missiles and drones? How does that help him? How does that help his people? Zelenskyy, by taking nothing back to Ukraine, has done more for Putin than they accused Trump of doing. It's absolutely extraordinary. Trump should stew in his own juice during congressional address, Pelosi advises Dems. This is kind of a side note to the Democrats continually attacking Trump. Don't be any grist for the mill to say this was inappropriate. Rep. Pelosi advises Dems ahead of Trump's speech. This is absolutely short. They're still trying to undermine Donald Trump. And as we're going to see a video from Scott Jennings, we mentioned this the other day when he was there with CNN. Of course, he's on the panel. And they were acting like Donald Trump was some third-party individual who inserted himself into or becoming the chief executive and then running the chief executive offices and departments and agencies as though Donald Trump is some third-party outsider who's come in to undermine their will. It's absolutely ridiculous, the mindset. Let's take a listen.
Madeline Rivera joins us live from Washington, D.C. So, Maddie, what's this resistance look like this time around?
Well, I think that's part of the problem that Democrats are experiencing right now. They have not been able to unite around one cohesive strategy. So since retaking office, President Trump has moved with lightning speed to reshape the federal government. And Democrats largely share one thing in common. They are angry. But again, they've been struggling with how to effectively push back against this administration. They're reportedly now weighing two approaches ahead of the president's joint address to Congress. Axios reports House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries and Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer do want members to attend with a +1. A congressional memo obtained by Axios asks House Democrats attending the joint address bring a guest who has been harmed by the Trump administration's early action.
Early actions. We're still within the first 100 days. This is still all unfolding. But the Democrats are not cohesive. They are not organized. They are still scrambling to figure out what went wrong. And, of course, what went wrong was their leftism, their ideology, their philosophy, their worldview was not in line with the American people. It just was not. And I'm glad the American people saw the persecution and lawfare against Donald Trump. And this is why he was so successful. And here is Rubio summing up the situation very clearly. Now, I can't take credit for having outlined what I told you, and that was that Zelenskyy was going home with nothing. So how does that benefit his people? But here is a more just an excellent articulation by Rubio.
But what specifically do you want to see President Zelenskyy apologize for?
Well, apologize for turning this thing into the fiasco for him that it became. There was no need for him to go in there and become antagonistic. Look, this thing went off the rails. You were there, I believe. It went off the rails when he said, let me ask you a question to the vice president. What kind of diplomacy are you talking about? Well, this is a serious thing. I mean, thousands of people have been killed, thousands. And he talks about all these horrible things that have happened to prisoners of war and children, all true, all bad. This is what we're dealing with here. It needs to come to an end. We are trying to bring it to an end. The way you bring it to an end is you get Russia to the table to talk. And he understands that attacking Putin, no matter how anyone may feel about him personally, forcing the president into a position where you're trying to goad him into attacking Putin, calling him names, maximalist demands about Russia having to pay for the reconstruction, all the sorts of things that you talk about in a negotiation. Well, when you start talking about that aggressively, and the president's a deal maker, he's made deals his entire life, you're not going to get people to the table. And so you start to perceive that maybe Zelenskyy doesn't want a peace deal. He says he does, but maybe he doesn't. And that active, open undermining of efforts to bring about peace is deeply frustrating for everyone who's been involved in communications with them leading up to today. And I think we should apologize for wasting our time.
And now you can watch the whole 19-minute interview if you want to. You can look it up. It's the CNN interview with Secretary of State Marco Rubio. And it's extraordinary. I mean, he said it right there. What is actually happening? We already know the Democrats are having trouble coordinating and getting together and figuring out where they went wrong, which we could always tell them where they went wrong. So how does it look when you see a world leader come to the United States and everything fall apart? Does that look more like something that's organized or something that's disorganized? I mean, it looked like Zelenskyy came here to score points with Democrats and world leaders because he left with nothing. Yeah, as Rubio says, there's people dying over there. How do you take back nothing and then try to substantiate your position, right? I had someone respond to me, says, well, at least Zelensky's leaving with his dignity and not leaving with his dignity. How does his dignity helping his people from missiles and drones? How is that helping his people? You know, and here's Jennings talking about getting right to the point, like we like to do here on the BuzWeaver channel, straight to the point.
He needs Zelenskyy to recognize the position that he's in.
Which to you is what?
We're their patron. We're their best hope for the killing to stop and for them to emerge from this sovereign and prosperous. And we're also their best hope as a business partner. I mean, all Zelenskyy had to do today was put on a tie, show up, smile, say thank you, sign the papers, and have lunch. That's it.
And I agree. That's all he had to do. Now, I'm not concerned about how Zelenskyy was dressed. That's not a big deal to me. Because as you guys know, here on the BuzWeaver channel, we try to get straight to the point, get the deal done, establish the goal and achieve it and not wax around with certain things, although I do wax from time to time. But it's how can any rational person not see that Donald Trump being a deal maker, why would he undermine what he was trying to do here? Why would all this planning be just to simply, what points was Trump scoring here? He didn't get his deal. He didn't get what he wanted. And there was no end to the war. Now, granted, he couldn't do it in 24 hours. That was a bit boisterous. But we already know the mannerisms and things that Donald Trump sets for himself to try to achieve. Undermining himself is not one of them. Not at all. And speaking of which, as they continue to say Trump ambushed or there was some, desire on the part of Trump and J.D. Vance to try to excoriate or try to, create an issue with Zelenskyy, talk down to him and this, that, and the other. They forget this particular interview from NBC News in 2022.
Yeah, that's right, Kate. So in this conversation, President Biden called President Zelenskyy to tell him about a roughly $1 billion package of additional equipment and weapons for the Ukrainian military coming from the United States. During the course of the call, President Zelenskyy continued, according to a number of officials who we spoke with who are familiar with the call, President Zelenskyy continued to talk about the additional equipment and weapons and support that he and his military needed. According to these officials, they said that President Biden finally just got frustrated and lost his temper and told President Zelenskyy, look, you could be a little bit more grateful. the reason that this story is interesting to us and is something that we're reporting on and officials are speaking to us about is because it shows that all these months ago, President Biden already realized that there was going to be a point where the American people, members of Congress, where people would start potentially pushing back on all these billions and billions of dollars of.
Exactly. And think about that. This is in 2022, right? That people were going to be pushing back. This was 2 years before we got to the point now where more and more money was being thrown at Zelenskyy. And it could be because, of course, the way the campaign was working out, or not working out more specifically for the Democrats, because they uninstalled Joe Biden. As easily as they installed him, the establishment installed Joe Biden, and the DEI hire of Kamala Harris, which is now all apparent because they uninstalled Joe Biden. So this idea that they, that Joe Biden was sharp as a tack and that this was a continuation of what they wanted to do with Ukraine was extraordinary, was it not? And how is it that Joe Biden can point these things out about Zelenskyy not being grateful, but Donald Trump is not? It's incredible. And speaking of that support, this is what we got from Harry Eaton on CNN. This was amazing.
Holy Toledo. Look at this trend line here. U.S. support for Ukraine is too much. Back when the war began, back in February of 2022, it was just 7%. Up like a rocket ship. My goodness. Up now in February of 2025 to 41%. And the clear majority of Republicans, and of course Republicans are in charge of the U.S. government now, 62% of Republicans say that the U.S. support for Ukraine is too much. What a difference from just 3 years ago. I can remember, John, all those backyards in the United States with those Ukrainian flags. Far fewer of them today, as Americans' opinions on Ukraine have changed dramatically.
What about opinions of the Ukrainian president?
Right. You know, obviously, if you would expect changes amongst the public on feelings towards Ukraine, feelings towards Zelenskyy have changed also dramatically. Look at this. Confident Zelenskyy will do the right thing when it comes to world affairs. Back in 2022, it was the clear majority, 72% through the floor. Through the floor by 2024, just 48% of Americans say that they're confident that Zelenskyy will do the right thing when it comes to world affairs. And GOP confidence has also plummeted dramatically. Now the clear majority of Republicans are not confident that Zelenskyy will do the right thing when it comes to world affairs. Really a real trend.
It's amazing, isn't it, ladies and gentlemen? Here it is. We already see it, but yet the Democrats and the media continue to suggest that Donald Trump is the problem. That his actions, that his words, that his policies, what he's doing with Doge, all these things that are actually benefiting the country are somehow undermining what the Democrats want. And that is their multicultural authoritarianism democracy. And, of course, now we're seeing that foreigners are allowed to serve in the Ukrainian National Guard. So for all those who want to stand with Ukraine, we'll see how much of a dedication you have to Ukraine. Now, I'm not trying to be overly sarcastic or cynical here, but the thing is, if these people are this adamant, they're this determined by supporting Ukraine, and I support Ukraine. I don't like what Russia has done. I don't like that Russia invaded Ukraine. I want Ukraine to have their country back, but suggesting that Donald Trump supports Russia is ridiculous. Okay, so Russia invaded Crimea during the Obama administration and the Joe Biden administration. So who was Obama supporting when that was happening? You see, the argument is so absurd that they're trying to make. And it's just that. They're just trying to tell you what opinions to have because they want you to have their opinion, not what's really happening, not step back and examine what's going on and make comparisons and contrasts in reality. It's insane. And here's what's even more insane. Listen to what Keir Starmer had to say.
With real urgency, the UK is prepared to back this with boots on the ground and planes in the air. Together with others, Europe must do the heavy lifting. But to support peace in our continent and to succeed, this effort must have strong US backing.
Must have strong U.S. backing. So what is Starmer trying to do? Is he trying to create a divide among Democrats to protest against Donald Trump for not doing enough to help Ukraine? Or does he really realize that they need the United States to make this happen, to make any effort in Europe happen? I can only imagine what the Canadians and the Europeans think now that they're talking about boots on the ground or additional money. because they're not going to have the kind of money that the United States can produce. And it's not possible. As we see here, did you notice that the U.S. media and the world media never mentioned that the Ukrainian people gain nothing from Volodymyr Zelensky's political point scoring? And look at how much we contribute. Look at first the countries sending the most aid to Ukraine. And you can see between money and equipment, it's the United States. And then when you look at breaking down NATO's defense spending, look at how much the United States spends compared to the other countries. This isn't a contest. This is not something that Zelensky can win, and this is not something the Europeans can win without United States support. And they are angry, just like the Democrats are angry, that Donald Trump is in power, because Donald Trump is a populist, and he's going to do what's in the best interest of the United States. That's for everyone in the United States, not just the 1%. It's everybody. But the Democrats, like they do, they like to nitpick, and they like to stereotype, and they like to look for certain little pinpoint things, selective looking at certain things to then make their arguments. And it's incredible. And look at what the globalists are saying. And it's like America AF says, who's running these world leaders' X accounts? They're all parroting the same thing. And it's like I said, it's all parroting. It's all a hive mind mindset to play this popularity influence game. Look, the world is all united for Ukraine. And look at that crazy orange guy over in the United States, Donald Trump. He doesn't know what he's doing. That guy has no clue. And I've already showed you guys in a short what happened when he was warning the Germans, and the Germans laughed. And now, of course, at the end of that video, the clip was just recently where Germany was crying about the fact that the situation turned out exactly the way Donald Trump had said. It's absolutely extraordinary. And here, apparently, I guess the G7 is going to be in Canada, and this was their response.
Given that we are the host of the G7 summit, and given that Donald Trump has threatened our very sovereignty, threatened our economic security, we should not invite Donald Trump to the G7.
These people are acting, just like I just said, as though Donald Trump is the threat to the world. He's the biggest problem the world has ever faced. It's Donald Trump. How in the world? So they're not only insulting Donald Trump, they're insulting the American people who voted. We won. Donald Trump won the popular vote. The first president, the first Republican president to win the popular vote since Bush in 2004. So 20 years he won the popular vote. He won the Electoral College. The GOP won the House and the Senate. It is unanimous. It is a sweep. Yet these people continue to argue the fact that Donald Trump is the biggest problem in the world. And it's absolutely extraordinary. But I do welcome your guys' thoughts and opinions down in the published section below, because, of course, this is quite extraordinary, is it not? Unprecedented what's going on in this world. And Zelensky did not help himself, much less his people. And how in the world is that Donald Trump's fault? Zelensky did more to help Putin by taking nothing home with him than Donald Trump has ever done. I want to thank all you guys across NewTek, that's BitChute, Rumble, and Odyssey, and all of you now watching on TikTok. Thank you guys. You can find all of my social medias, links down below this video. And, of course, if you order frequently from Amazon or are a Prime member, I have a landing page link there that you guys can use. It helps out the channel and your privacy is protected. And speaking of privacy, while you're online, of course, I use TrustZone and VPN. I've been using them for years. So if you're looking for that safety online or maybe ordering tickets, maybe for those of you guys who want to go to Ukraine, log in under Ukraine and get your tickets for a discounted rate. But nonetheless, guys, and I'm not trying to make too much light of that because of the seriousness of it all. But nonetheless, guys, I want to thank all of you for your continued support. That's everyone here on YouTube who have been amazing. All of you guys here on YouTube. And that would be the channel icon appearing for all of you guys on YouTube. You guys can click on that to subscribe, as well as to select notification. That way you know when there's content here on the channel. And I'll see all you guys in the next video.